In this video, I check out these Nicety acrylic markers for painting miniatures. But before we get into today's video, just want to share with you what the GGGGs are for this month. Each month, Bob the Beholder picks some of my Patreon supporters to receive gratitude gifts. And for this month of September of 2025, we have 2 pledges for the Forsaken Sentinels Kickstarter. We have a printed and painted terrain piece from Forsaken Sentinels, winner's choice. And $100 going towards the Bluffs of Blackledge Kickstarter. Go ahead and use the link below to go to my Patreon page where you can get in on this month's gratitude gifts. Bob is going to be making his picks this coming Sunday, September 28th. So I know a couple of other miniature painters have come out with review videos for using markers to paint up their miniatures, and those have typically been from current paint manufacturers like Army Painter with their Speed Paints brand. But I felt like those were too expensive and I could get the same quality just by using the current paints that I use. But one of my friends reached out to me and suggested I try out the Amazon Nicety brand of acrylic markers. And I got this set, 128 of them for $50, which amounts to about 40 cents per marker. Now, as you can see here, you're getting a ton of them, 128 different colors. I'm willing to try it out for only $50, considering that one pot of paint can cost me anywhere between $6 or $7. Go ahead and use my Amazon affiliate link below if you are interested in picking these up. They do come out with a smaller set than this that is about half the price and half the number of pens. So if you don't want to dive right in and getting a full package, you can do that. Also, they have a bigger set even than this one, but this is the one that I went for to try out. But you are getting a lot of colors, as you can see here. And in order for me to really determine whether or not these acrylic markers are for me in terms of painting up miniatures, there has to be a couple of things in place. One is that it has to do as good of a job as my regular paints. Otherwise, I don't know if it would be worth it. But I am willing to sacrifice a little bit on quality in order to have the speed in which I can get the miniatures painted up and to the table. I'm already doing speed painting with speed paints with contrast colors, so my workflow is relatively quick. But most recently, I have some miniatures to paint up, a lot of them for Draw Steel, the RPG. You have a lot of enemies that you're fielding on the board. And most recently, for my next session, I need about 50 human characters in order to field enough miniatures for a bandit camp. So I really need to get these on the table fast. I'm going to go ahead and just time myself and see if I can gain efficiencies by using these pens instead. I'm also going to experiment a little bit on the undercoat, whether or not that makes a difference. For the most part, I imagine having a white undercoat, a spray primer is going to be the best, but I'll experiment a little bit whether a zenithal is better than that. And then finally, I'll see whether or not I need a wash. And if I do have to put a wash, will these colors reactivate when I put the wash over them? Again, that's sort of a deal breaker for me. So it has to fit all of that criteria in order for me to judge these as being worth it and a viable method of painting up some miniatures. So let's go ahead and check it out at the painting table. So here I just wanted to show you all of the miniatures that I 3D printed. These are all from One Page Rules. This is the Human Empire fantasy miniatures, and so just printed out a bunch of guys that I need for this bandit camp. And now I'm starting the timer for my traditional way of painting so that I can see the time comparison between using speed paints here to speed it up and just showing you how long it takes just to paint up one of these minions, and we'll compare it to how quickly I can color it for the markers. So I'm curious to know, because I feel like it's already pretty fast using speed paints. Here, I think this is Gilliman Flesh for the skin tones from Citadel contrast colors, which is my go-to sort of skin color. And you'll notice here that there's quite a bit of time that goes between washing my brush and grabbing another paint pot because I have to shake it up. So there's more time spent just grabbing another pot to do a color change. And I'm just skipping ahead just so that not showing the entire paint job so that you can see how long it takes. But just wrapping up with some brown, and pretty much this takes 10 minutes to do one miniature to paint the entire thing, which, you know, is pretty quick. Now I'm comparing that to these brushes or these markers to see how fast I can get these done. And I anticipate that it might be a little bit faster. Now these brush tips, they didn't wear out. I know a couple of the other YouTubers who use them complained about the fact that the cheap brushes, the brush tips will actually wear out. Now this brand has two tips. One is the brush tip and the other one is more like a pen tip. But I didn't ever use the pen tip. I just used the brush because more of the paint could go on. Now you can notice right away one of the big differences is that it is going on pretty opaque. So it's more similar to regular painting where you put on a layer of base paint over the primer, the spray primer. And there's definitely no going into the recesses like contrast colors or speed paint. So this is not going to function like speed paints. Army Painter does make pens that does have the speed paint that has the same effect. But these markers are meant to be opaque where they are just putting down a solid color. And I'm finishing up with the silver here. I'm pretty impressed with the metallics as well. They look pretty good, although the silver is pretty bright. So here it took about 7 minutes to use the markers for the same model. And here's a side-by-side comparison between the two. And again, you can see on the left how opaque it is, and there isn't much shading, whereas on the right, it is going to have more shading just because the contrast colors are going to be more transparent, and you can see the undercoating. So I'm going to go ahead and use Strong Tone, or you can use Agrax Earthshade, and just put on a wash over the marker version just because I don't like how solid the colors are, and this will just give it a little bit more depth where the wash will provide and go into the cracks and crevices to provide some shading. So let's go ahead and see how this turns out just with that added on there. Now of course we're going to add time to it, but not 3 minutes worth of time in order to put a wash on there. So this is still going to save time over the other method. Now here I went ahead and experimented by spray priming with a dark brown, but as you can see here, the marker is struggling to actually cover over that spray primer, that dark brown spray primer, and though it's sort of beading up. So the coverage is not as good. So depending on what kind of spray primer that you're priming your models with, you're going to have various mileage from what you're using. So here on the left, obviously, because of the darker undercoating, the paint just isn't as good in terms of covering it all. So white is basically the best undercoat. Here I went ahead and spray primed Zenithal with a silver spray paint, and that is because there's a lot of armor on these soldiers, and this will save me a step of painting up the armor. And so I go ahead and again use the markers, and this time there is some striping on the clothes, so I'm going to make it blue and white, but I'm going to go ahead and do the blue first and wait until I do the wash over before I put the white on, because if I put the wash over the white just becomes really a sort of beige brown, light brown color, and I want it to be a pure white. So I'm going to wait and see what the effect looks like, but I am just putting down, again, solid colors. The colors are pretty opaque, so they go on pretty well. It is a little bit hard because you only have one size brush to get into some spots, so you're not going to get quite as much control over the level of detail that you can get with a brush, because obviously you can change up the brush size. But here you're sort of stuck with what is on the marker. Let's go ahead and put a wash on it. This time I am using the dark tone, which is more a black base rather than the brown base from the strong tone. And I'm going to just give a good wash over the entire thing and let it dry. And when I spray prime something with silver, this is the method that I use regardless of whether or not I'm using traditional paints or using a marker. So now that it's dry, I am going to go back in and go, sorry with the angle, you can't quite see the face, but here I'm applying the white. And the coverage with the white isn't quite as opaque as it is with the blue, but as you can see, it is much brighter than had I put it underneath the wash. So that's why I made that a step after the wash. And here on the shield, you can see that I'm getting decent coverage, although if I really wanted to, I should put a second coat on. Now I'm going to go ahead and use this gold, and I'm really impressed again with the metallics. It looks super good. And then I'm going to color in the hair, make it a little bit blonde. And then finally here I experimented. I got an orange just to make the feathered hat contrast with the blue, but there's a number of colors that really doesn't match the cap color. So this orange is more like a light peach, almost skin color. Now I'm going to go ahead and try to put some lighter highlights over the blue, but I think I picked a light blue that is a little bit too light. So I wanted something that wasn't so much lighter than the base blue because it doesn't look quite as good. And I didn't really see a lot of other options that wasn't sort of like a medium in between these two colors. So even though I have 128 pens, you are pretty limited, and a number of them are very similar to each other. So you're not quite getting the variety as you would be led to believe. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab my Pro Acryl Orange, just because I couldn't find in the entire set an orange that I was happy with. And a number of the colors are a little bit on the pastel-y side of things. So in those spots, I'm going to go ahead and just use my paint, my regular paints, because I know the color that I can get from those. So I'm going to go finish off just by putting a layer of gray over the base and then black along the edge just to finish it off. I think this looks pretty good, and definitely am happy with the color that's on there. And then finally, I just had one more color. I sort of used an olive yellowish green just for some of the pouches that are on the belts, and that completes it all. So pretty happy with it. All right, so go ahead and check these out. This is obviously not washed at all and is solid, and a zenithal underbase. This one was completely white undercoating, and this one is zenithal. Obviously this is the control with the regular speed paints. So overall I'm super happy with the level of quality that these guys came out to. Definitely serviceable, tabletop ready. You can throw these on and I think they look great. And I think these soldiers look even better just because of the silver undercoating. Made it so that all of the silver looks relatively good with that wash over it. And it saves me a step of painting. And then the blue has a lot of opacity. So impressed with that. The white is not quite as thick going on, and that's why I waited until after the wash just so that it can be brighter. But it works plenty good. And I'm also impressed with the gold color on there. So overall, super happy with how these turned out. I think they are definitely tabletop ready. They look really good. So yeah, I think they look fantastic. So there you have it. Hopefully this video is helpful for you. If you are a miniature painter and you are considering having a cheap alternative to the name brand painting markers, I think this is a good cheap alternative, with the caveat that you are going to have to put a wash over it if you want to have any depth to it, but this definitely does save time from using traditional brush method. Now I'm going to use both the markers and use my brushes for certain colors and applications, but I am fairly impressed with what you're getting for the cost of this entire set. Maybe go with the smaller one rather than this, since I feel like there's a lot of colors that are somewhat repeats. I don't need this many options of each of the colors, but your mileage may vary depending on what some of your projects are. And I don't quite know how long each one of these brushes last. I imagine, you know, my white and my black might go more quickly, but I have a ton of those paints, so if I run out, I can just use paints. And because these are so cheap, probably my most used colors, I'll just go ahead and just buy another set if I need to, if I run out of enough of them. It's relatively cheap compared to regular paints in order to replace these. Use the link below to go to my Patreon page where you can get in on this month's gratitude gifts. Remember, it only takes $1 to be eligible to be chosen by Bob for one of this month's gifts. Otherwise, happy painting. We'll see you next time.